This is the Ramana Maharshi 40 Verses on Reality Satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and to inquire into the self. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I've been blessed with years of deep teaching and practice that I bring to this satsang. This week's reading is from 40 Verses on Reality, verse 27. These are Ramana's words. The state of non-emergence of I is the state of being that. Without questing for that state of the non-emergence of I and attaining it, how can one accomplish one's own extinction from which the I does not revive? Without that attainment, how is it possible to abide in one's true state, where one is that? There are times when the I does not emerge, like in deep meditation, samadhi, deep sleep, or when you are fully absorbed in something. What is it like when the I isn't there? Do you exist when there is no I? Of course you do. The I emerges when we think we are this individual, this body, this mind. This I comes when we have assumed identity of ourself as an individual. It is this unchallenged assumption, this belief in the individual, this idea that I am the body, that underlies the I thought. When we see ourselves as this body and this person, then its joys and sorrows are, we think, ours. Whatever happens to the body seems to happen to us. When the body suffers, we suffer. When the body feels joy, we are joyful. Instead of seeing the movie from the point of view of the screen, untouched by the movie, we see it as the character involved in the drama. No wonder we suffer. So, what practice is needed to experience this state of non-emergence of I that Ramana tells us about? Self-inquiry, self-investigation. Inquire, who am I? What is the nature of my existence? Ask yourself, do I exist as a body, a mind, a spirit, or am I that which knows all of these and which is present always? When this inquiry is deep, you see that the ego comes and goes. Sometimes you see it, sometimes not. You see for yourself that the ego is impermanent. The ego comes and goes, but its presence or absence is known. Who is the knower? You are able to see that the ego never really existed to begin with. it was always just an imagination. When you know this, when this is your actual experience, how can any imagined I ever arise? Even if it does, it's easily dismissed as not I, not I. Here are some ideas for practice to make this experiential knowledge. What is the nature of your existence? Are you a body? Are you the one who acts and so has karma? You know the body. Does the body know you? The body changes. Do you change? Are you a thinker? Are you a meditator? Are you a spiritual practitioner? Or are you that which knows all of these? Can the one who knows ever be found among the known? What is the known? Who is the knower? Who am I? When you come to see the imagined snake as a rope, did the snake ever exist? Was it ever real? What is always real? Who am I? Now to our videos for the week. First is Swami Sarvapriyananda. His talk is Lead Us from the Unreal to the Real.
Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. You know this prayer from the Upanishads? If you look at what we chanted, it's exactly the retreat that we have been doing. Lead us from darkness unto light. It's a poetic way of putting it, but philosophically what we are doing is lead us from the object to the pure subject. Lead us from that which is insentient to that which is sentient. Darkness and light are consciousness and not consciousness. And lead us from the not consciousness to consciousness does not mean make us conscious. We are already conscious. Just the awareness, it has to be pointed out that we are consciousness. Because we have identified ourselves with that part, that is the body and the mind, which is not conscious in itself. And we have forgotten our nature as pure consciousness. So lead us from darkness unto light is actually, it means lead us from the not consciousness to consciousness. And the first sentence which we chanted, that's actually the theme of this session. Lead us from the unreal to the real. But strictly, if you translate the Sanskrit, asato ma sadgamaya, lead us from that which is not, from the is not to the isness. Lead us from the appearance to the isness. Sat means pure being. Lead us from the appearance to the pure being. And the third line gives the consequence, the result of all of this. So what do we gain by all of this? Lead us from death to immortality. Mrityu mamritam gamaya. How do you lead us from death to immortality? We are that immortal being, but we don't know it. Just by realizing it. The Upanishad says, Brahma Veda Brahmaiva Bhavati. The knower of Brahman is Brahman. Even if you do not know that you are Brahman, you're still Brahman, but you suffer. If you know that you are Brahman, you actually see it, then you can transcend suffering. This session is about isness, pure being. Brahman is often spoken of as Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, in the second session, we saw Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Brahman is infinite existence consciousness. So that infinite consciousness aspect of it, we dealt in the first session and also in the second session. But in the third session now, we're going to talk about the infinite existence aspect of it. In Sanskrit, it's called Sat. Sat means that which is, isness, being. And this session is also going to be a struggle because I have the added responsibility of keeping you awake. We have added that extra isness in our tummies. You can feel the isness there. You can center yourself in the isness in the tummy. To me, there's this koan, a Japanese poem, not a koan, a poem, a haiku, a Japanese poem, which are in a particular meter, a short poem, a particular number of syllables, which captures to me the essence of isness. It's beautiful. And the experience of isness. It goes like this. The thunderstorms have stopped. The last clouds have gone. We sit, the old mountain and I, until only the mountain remains. This is the essence of isness. Think about it. We sit. The thunderstorms have gone. Life is calm. Nothing more is really going to happen in this life. It's going to go on like this till the end of the body. Very calm, very relaxed. I do not look forward to anything more happening in life. So I'm relaxed. The last clouds have gone from the sky. Desire, frustration, envy, jealousy, expectation, they've gone. I have nothing more to ask from life. We sit, the old mountain and I. Imagine a monk sitting at the foothill of a mountain, the old mountain and I, until only the mountain remains. Your sense of an individual entity. I won't explain. Explaining it spoils the thing.
And now we have Swami Ādyaśakti, who's also talking about verse 27, and he calls this verse, I am that.
Namaste, and welcome to the 27th episode of Vuladu Narpadu. And some of my friends were asking me, well, why haven't you posted a video lately? And the reason is I was doing research for this verse. This is a pretty heavy verse. And I felt I had to experience the states described in the verse before I could speak on it. So that's been quite a process, a week or 10 days of intense sadhana. And fortunately, I had some good astrological transits that helped me. So I went deep into the sadhana and actually experienced this. This is a principle of mine. I don't speak on things which I haven't experienced. I don't talk about theory. I only talk about my experience. So that's why there's been quite a delay. I had to go into Shankaracharya and everything to get this. So the verse. The state in which this I, the ego, which arises as if the first, does not arise, is the state in which I am that. Unless one scrutinizes the source, the real self from which I arises, how to attain the state of egolessness, the destruction of the individual self, in which I does not arise. And unless one attains that non-arising of I, say, how to abide in one's own real state, the natural state of self, in which I am that. So this is another one of those convoluted classical Tamil verses. But I prefer Sadhu Om's translations because he gets into all the nuances and supplies the inferred words and meaning as well as the literal. He doesn't try to simplify it, but he gives the whole meaning, and I really like that. So Sadhu Om goes on to comment on a note in this verse. In scriptures it is taught that instead of feeling I am this body, we should experience I am that. In other words, I am Brahman, the absolute reality. The state of experience, which is thus referred to as I am that, or I am Brahman, is only one's real and natural state, in which one abides as the pure adjunctless existence consciousness I am, without rising as the adjunct mixed feeling I am this body. Therefore, in order to experience the truth denoted by the words I am that, one must attain the state in which the ego, the feeling I am this body, does not arise. And in order to attain this state of egolessness, one must scrutinize the source of the ego, for only when one scrutinizes its source, the real self, the pure consciousness I am, will the ego subside and be found to be non-existent. So, this is the sadhana. This is the process by which one arrives at self-realization. So, this self-realization, in the beginning, is momentary. In the Vedas, and also to a certain extent in Buddha's teaching, the words this refer to the body, and that refers to the reality, the Brahman, Nibbana, Nirvana, the Absolute. So instead of thinking I am this, one should think I am that. However, as pointed out in the previous verse, there are not two selves. There's only one self. So when we see in meditation, for example, the vision of Brahman or the light, if you're meditating properly with good concentration, you should see light. I've been seeing nice, bright light in my meditation now since, oh my God, 1982? A long time. So, what does that mean? Are we really seeing the self? No. What we're seeing is Atma Abhasa, or the reflection of the self in the purified mind. By meditation, one purifies the mind so that, at least temporarily, it does not give rise to incorrect identification such as I am the body. I am the body is called an upadi, a limiting adjunct. And the limiting adjunct of the jiva, the individual being, is I am the body. Whereas the limiting adjunct of Brahman is I am Ishvara, I am the God, the controller, creator, and so on. So when these adjuncts, when these upadis are taken away by the process of self-realization, then one realizes the real situation. I am that. So in other words, we don't see that, the Brahman, or the self, as something separate. As Ramana is fond of saying, the only way to see that is to be that. So in other words, we become Brahman. We actually realize or experience ourselves as Brahman. Now, some people misinterpret this, and they want to say, I am God. No. No. Because in that state, one has no conception of I at all. Why is that? Because in Brahman, there is no differences. It's called undifferentiated, unbounded, one without a second. So if there's nothing to distinguish self from not self, then there's no such concept as I, because I is only real in distinction to that. You follow? In other words, in duality we have the concept of self and not self. I and others. You and he. No? I am the first person. You and he are the second and third persons. And of course there's that, which is also third person. So in self-realization, we no longer make this distinction. Therefore, I becomes meaningless. And also you, and he, and that, all becomes meaningless. In the non-dual state, there is no difference. So how can we assert these delimiting adjuncts, upadhis? See? So, in that state of pure subjectivity, one is only aware of being, not identity. Because identity means thinking that two different things are the same, isn't it? So, in the world of Brahman, there is no identity because there are no two things. There's no duality. So in this way, one simply feels amness, beingness, pure consciousness. And this is not seen outside oneself, but felt within oneself as a warm effulgence or radiance coming from the heart. And it has a kind of transcendental emotion of lovingness associated with it. As the Ribhu Gita says, speaking in the voice of Brahman, I am amiable, friendly, not attached, not possessive, but simply friendly, amiable to all. And I am not against any action. So we see people who have realized Brahman do not have hard and fast rules about what is right, what is wrong, what one should do, what one should not do. They're very open, very broad-minded, very accepting. And it has to be like that because, again, without upadhis, without limiting adjuncts, then everything is cool, right? Because nothing can hurt Brahman. Nothing can hurt one who has realized Brahman either.
Now we're going to listen to my teacher, Nome. His discourse is Without Ego.
Inconceivable and forever. The self alone exists. It is utterly egoless. There is nothing apart from that. There is no one other than that. Non-differentiation is of its very nature. with the conception of I, of some kind of individuality, comes illusion, the ending of which is in the form of spiritual practice, which is inquiry to know what we really are. When you so inquire, the unreal being unreal simply ceases to exist. It is as if the non-existent became non-existent again. Even considered from the perspective of manifestation, throughout all time and space, of what significance is the minuscule, embodied, personal entity? It is like nothing at all. And from the advantage of self-knowledge, the whole universe, with all its time and space, is as nothing at all. Therefore, spiritual practice has for its aim and for its purpose the utter elimination of the conceiving of yourself as an individual entity, as an embodied form. If that delusion is abandoned, the self-existent remains self-evident. Both the delusion and the one who is deluded are of the same character, and it is these that really do not exist. Self-knowledge reveals this. If there is the conception of an individual I or ego, then the conception of names and forms, all that is conceivable and perceivable, follows. If name and form are abandoned, by inquiring for whom are they, and realizing the non-individualized, non-conceiver, non-perceiver nature of your own being, then what is found to exist is only being consciousness bliss, with no possibility of name or form, of I or this world. That which is found is ever existent, the nature of the one who realizes himself. All that is occurring is the doing away with imagination. For the reality always is, and alone is. That alone is, that alone is what you are, that there is no possibility of anyone or anything else ever, is the significance of non-duality. Its significance is not only a resolution or absence of opposites, but rather its significance is that which alone is. That is the self. If now you think I'm speaking about something else, I'm speaking about you. Not something apart from you. Not something unrealized by you now that will be realized by you later. But about you. The only self that you truly are. This which you are is the aim of all spiritual practice. This which you are is the inner core of all spiritual experience. Yet in its own nature, it is beyond the conception of attainment or its opposite, and is not an experience, but the only reality. In his commentary on the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Shankara says that there are two types of humility, or two types of egolessness, really. Egolessness is the term he uses. The first, he says, is of a sattvic nature, and is demonstrated or manifested through the humility of holy people. The second, though, he says, is indescribable because it's utterly inconceivable. And while the first is beneficial, leading toward the second is that which we must realize. It is beyond any quality, even sattva. This egolessness is the realization of our own true self. It implies the utter destruction of the notion of another, that you would be something else other than that self. This is why the Maharshi has said the egoless state is our real state, the only state that there is. That is, you are not one kind of self at any other time, at some time, and the real self at another time. Abandon imagination, or ignorance as we call it, and know the truth of your being. You abandon such imagination or ignorance by knowing it to be such. And with such abandonment, all is only Brahman. Brahman alone is.
And now we will meditate for a few minutes, inquire, and breathe in and out long, slow breaths. Feel the breath as it comes in and it goes out. And now notice that you exist. You exist, and you know that you exist. And investigate within yourself. Who am I? What is the nature of my existence? Am I a body? Am I a mind? And am I an ego? Or am I the one that knows all of these? Who knows? The body's always changing, but what within me does not change. What is always? Can I be something that comes and goes and changes? Who am I? All right, let us end with a little chant. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you. This series on Ramana's 40 Verses on Reality will continue in the following weeks. If this satsang was of interest, I have more, a free book site, a YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs will be on screen next. Namaste.